Okay, welcome back everybody. Uh, Before I get started on this next lecture, I'm going to use this opportunity. Hopefully you're logging onto these and using these video lectures. But remember the movie assignment due today. Today's the 27th, Monday the 27th, so you got to get it in. If you don't, you're going to lose some points. So if you have a couple options. One is through my BGB Max email, hotmail.com, bgbmax hotmail.com, or send it through the Magnese email account. But please get those in. And the way you'll know that I've gotten it is you'll see it posted under Moodle on movie assignment. So let's pick up and try to get another section in, and then I'm going to hopefully wrap this up by Wednesday. Reminder, check the weekly posts that I'm putting up for you on Moodle for your final exam date. I'm going to move on now to the section on major depressive disorders. I don't have a PowerPoint screen for it on your printed PowerPoint, so you're just going to have to take note, look it up in the book, and under the heading of depression, you're going to need to be able to diagnose major depressive disorder. So I'm going to give you the criteria, the symptoms in which you're looking for. So if you look, you're going to see that you have to have 5 of the 9 behaviors listed, and then they vary, like oversleeping or not sleeping enough, overeating, not eating enough, kind of dropping out of activities that you formerly enjoy. Just look at the list of 9 and you'll see a scenario. You need at least 5 of those 9 to occur consecutively for at least 14 days. So there can't be any break in the mood. It has to be every day for at least 2 weeks, and it has to continuously show 5 of the 9 every day. With that, you can get a diagnosis of major depressive disorder. Now, as far as gender, a little further down the page, you're going to see that females are far more likely to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder than are males, and it gives you a list of reasons. Some of them just off the top. A tendency to ruminate or think about whatever it is that's bothering them over and over. Discrimination, mixed feelings about body image, and so on. So look at those, and it'll give you some idea. Just remember that females tend to internalize, which means they do think about these things more. Males tend to externalize, which, while it may be depression, it shows up as aggression. All right, so moving on, let's talk about the connection between depression and suicide. The number one reason given, or the strongest correlation of suicide, is going to be depressive disorders. It's going to be connected to this more than any other factor. And there's many factors. It could be family issues, peer issues, isolation, and different things. A sense of helplessness, hopelessness. But the number one you're going to pick is depression. Now, it's very rare in childhood, but beginning around age 15, you're going to see an increase in the likelihood. And by emerging adults, the 19 to 22-year-old, that group of young people, it's going to triple. And so that's just by that age category or developmental stage, it jumps quite a bit. It's the 3rd leading cause of death among young people, with accidental death being 1, homicide being 2, suicide being 3. When it comes to terminology, suicidal ideation is going to be thinking about committing suicide but not taking any action. Suicide attempt is going to be taking action but typically not completing the suicide, obviously, and then finally completing the suicide is actually someone successfully taking their own life. As far as gender, females are going to use a much more passive approach, like overdosing, and because of that, there's less females committing suicide than males, but there's far more females attempting suicide. The opposite of that is true in that with males, they're going to take a much more direct approach, something that does not allow time for intervention, and because of that, far more males successfully complete suicide, while even though there's not as many of them attempting. And so just keep those things in mind when it comes to this whole subject of suicide. Now, some other terminology that I want you to be aware of. If you see the term distal, distal means something occurred in the past, years ago. So something could have happened to a person in their childhood years, and it's been unresolved for all these years. It's been a burden. They've been thinking about it, and then they commit suicide. So typically, the family or friends would say, this seemed to come out of nowhere. It didn't seem like anything was wrong. But it's really an event that occurred many years earlier in their life. The proximal means it's something that happened just recently. So that might be a breakup in a relationship, abandonment by a family member, or the death of another member in the family within the past year, and it's something that occurred fairly recent. So they call that proximal when it comes to that. Again, here it is on the screen if you're following me on PowerPoint. Depressive symptoms, and I cited those for you a minute ago, so look at those. Those are the most common reasons given that people consider suicide. And there's many others, like I told you, sense of hopelessness, abandonment, isolation from friends, and so on. And so I think that's enough on that subject. The last part of this chapter is covering eating disorders. Eating disorders are going to be listed as 3 different types. The first one is the most severe and the most serious, and that's called anorexia. Anorexia nervosa is the technical name for it. And again, this is another case where the criteria listed in the book is not current, because this has just been revised. But for our purposes and the test bank purposes, we will go with this. Of the 3 eating disorders, this is the most serious. This one is deadly, but it's the least common. So make a note, less than 1% of the population suffer from anorexia. By gender, obviously the majority of clients or young people who suffer from this are females, far more common among the female population. The criteria, and this has been changed, this says weighing less than 85% of what would be normal or typical body weight for someone of that stature and age. The problem there is, well, what is normal? This can change. But an example would be if you would expect a young girl, high school, to have an average weight of 100 pounds, just to keep it simple, then one of the criteria would be that they weigh 84 pounds or less, and that would put them below this 85% threshold. Second, an intense fear of gaining weight, which means like a phobia. It's irrational. They just absolutely fear that they're going to gain any weight, so they're going to spend a lot of time tracking calories intake and then making sure they burn calories so that they do not gain any weight. And then finally, a distorted body image, that's called body dysmorphia, but specifically in this case it has to do with looking at themselves and seeing areas where they still believe they need to lose weight in spite of there's no one else would possibly see where they could lose any more weight, but this is what they see and this is how they feel. So that's anorexia nervosa. The second eating disorder listed is bulimia, and this is a bulimia nervosa is really what you should write down here. Bulimia nervosa is binging and purging, and so the young person will eat, they'll binge eat, and then they'll purge either through laxatives or forcing themselves to vomit. So it's not as dangerous as the anorexia because they are consuming enough calories to maintain, but of course it's an unhealthy cycle, and again primarily in females. The third and I don't have a screen for it, but just simply bulimia without the binging, purging. Bulimia is just overeating for whatever reason without the purging. So you'll see that also in the book. Now, the only other thing I can think of here that maybe I don't have a PowerPoint for is pay attention to obesity, weight gains in childhood, whether or not it's a good predictor of being overweight as an adolescent. I think you'll find that it is. But read that, it's a paragraph or two. I think this gives you enough information to start preparing for the final. Again, check the posting. And then on Wednesday, I'll try, if I have an opportunity, do a little review for you. And that'll be it for today.